Okay, I'm here with the Cage Warriors middleweight champion, Matt Bonner. This Friday, Cage Warriors 131, main event. Your call, UFC Fight Pass if you're not in London. How's it going, man?
Yeah, I'm going really good, thanks, mate. Like I was saying just before we started, it was like the last day of training today, so that was good to get out of the way with, and then kind of the rest of the time till Friday, I'll be getting the rest of the weight off, which is pretty small, to be honest. It's not going to be something that's really hard to do, but something that the water loading will start tomorrow, and then the sweat will come into kind of like Tuesday, Wednesday. I'll start sweating all the water out.
So we're a week out as we record this interview right now. Just how's the mindset going into this one?
I'm looking forward to it, which not unusual, but it's a good place to be. I'm certainly not dreading competing or anything. I'm kind of the mindset I've been for the last 4 fights, which is just looking forward to it, being excited, being grateful that I'm main event on one of the biggest shows in Europe and defending a belt and whatnot. So the attitude now is I'm just grateful to be, looking forward to next week and looking to put on a really good performance.
So the last time we talked was a few days after the title win, and I don't think it had quite sunk in for you then. Has it sunk in now?
Yeah, as I've certainly enjoyed, being a champion and whatnot, and it's nice for people to recognise you just a little bit more and maybe have a little bit more respect for you. So that's nice. In terms of my lifestyle, it's not really changed or anything. I've not been stopped in the street or anything like that. But it's more of a personal thing. I'm proud of myself, and it was certainly like a bucket list thing for me to win a Cage Warriors belt. So I can tick that bucket list thing off and move on to the next one.
So that was about 6 months ago. Are you the kind of fighter that likes that break in between fights, or do you wish, like in an ideal world, because obviously we're not living in an ideal world right now, but in an ideal world, would you like to fight more often than that?
I would. I'd kind of like to fight 5-6 times a year at least. It was actually my fault. I say my fault, but in October, the Cage Warriors had a card in same place, London, York Hall. But I was getting married a week after.
A good excuse.
And I was kind of yeah. So I was getting married a week after, so I didn't want to kind of turn up to my wedding all broken and bruised and stuff. And then obviously after the Frederick fight, that was quite an intense fight. There was a few little niggles and things that needed attending to. So, but yeah, generally I would, when I was an amateur, or even before I went next year when I was a pro, I was fighting 5-6 times a year. I think if you're fit and healthy and feeling good, then you should be looking to fight, and that's what I'm looking to do. I'm looking at building my record and taking the next steps up.
So onto this fight then. Djati Melan. Did this matchup surprise you a little bit? Because he's a guy who his last 2 fights haven't been in Cage Warriors.
It did. I mean, when I got sent the name by my coach, it wasn't. I didn't know him. I didn't kind of have any experience or any kind of. I didn't know. I'd not seen him fight beforehand. Obviously, then you kind of go and do your own little research and whatnot. But I was struggling to see who they were going to put me against. In terms of the roster, the current roster. Generally, Cage Warriors will use a guy from their current roster. They prefer that than bringing in a guy like they have done with Milan. But I think that's more of a testament to kind of what impact I've made on the division. There's no one left really who is in the place to compete for the belt. Nick Stanton was shouting for a title shot. He'd lost the last 3 of his 4 fights. Carl Stewart, the American, I would have fought him. But that was never really considered. And he'd lost his last fight about 3-4 weeks ago. He'd lost on a Cage Legacy, I believe, in America. So I was struggling to see who they were going to bring in or who they were going to bring from the roster in. And obviously there wasn't really anyone who kind of met the requirements. So they've had to bring in Milan from France, and it is what it is. I'd prefer to fight someone from Cage Warriors, honestly. Obviously, you've got a lot more kind of video and tape to look back on and see what they bring to the table. Milan, he's very much a little bit of a mysterious character coming in. But it is what it is. I don't pick my opponents. I never have done and never will do. And I sign the contract and away we go.
So you mentioned obviously not knowing much about him. What have you been able to find out when you look at the research you've done? What stands out to you?
Well, he's a southpaw. That's the first thing that stood out. He's a southpaw fighter. He's left hand is his power hand. He's quite a strong wrestler. He's got a very explosive double leg takedown, but he's very passive. he's very. I've never seen another guy who's as passive as Milan in terms of he's very much, he wants to stand off you. He doesn't really want to engage. He's not a scrapper. He don't want to brawl. You take 1 foot, one step forward, he'll take 3 steps back. He's certainly did in his last fight anyway. The kind of mystery surrounding Milan for me is he's not fought for a year. Now, what's he done in that year? Has he been dossing about at home because it's been locked down and he's not been able to improve his skill set? He's not been in the gym, or has he been, working on his technique? Has he become a better striker? Has he been further work on his grappling? Because his grappling, I think, is quite high level. So that's kind of the mystery that he brings in. He's not fought for a while. He's only fought 7 times at pro. So he's certainly, he's a bit of a mystery, and he's a bit of a banana peel fighter. He's one of those guys that you can't take lightly, because otherwise you'll slip up and get caught by something silly.
This is your 4th fight in a row at your call. It's becoming a bit of a home for you, isn't it? Obviously, you've won all those fights as well. Difference between this and the last fight is that, as it stands, and we should say as it stands, given everything going on at the minute, we're going to have a full crowd.
Sure.
Yeah. How excited are you for that?
I am excited, and I'm surprised that I'm excited. The crowd never really played a part in my fight. They never affected me in a positive way, and they never really affected me in a negative way. It was. I always had the understanding of, when I was in the cage, it's me, the fella, and the referee, and it's those 3 people that matter in the cage. So the crowd never really had a big role in my fights, but since they've gone, you realise how much of an impact they do make in terms of the buzz and the atmosphere and whatnot. And so, yeah, I'm looking forward to the crowds being there. Like you just said, in terms of the York Hall, I've been very successful there. It's a venue for me that's full of kind of positive memories and things. And I find it's odd, and it sounds silly, but sometimes you do walk into a venue and straight away you feel very comfortable. I felt that at the O2 as well when I fought Warren Key there. As soon as I stepped foot in the room, I liked being in there, and it was positive. Again, it didn't really make much sense maybe to some people, but the York Hall is that for me as well. As soon as I'm in there, I know where everything is. I know where the changing rooms are. I know where the toilets are. I know where I'm going to be, what changing room I'm going to be in, and where all the refreshments and whatnot are. So it's very comfortable. And again, it's full of all those positive memories, and hopefully I'll be adding another, a positive memory to the list.
It sounds like you just like going down to London to fight, to be honest.
Yeah, it is. It's one of those things where, I mean, you jump on a train, it's 2 hours away, and you think, oh God, and then you have to go there and be in the media room and whatnot. But I mean, I say this to my brother, and we try and say it to all the amateur fighters or anybody even at next gen who will laugh. Listen, you've got to enjoy all this, because this is very short-lived. I'm 31 in December. I could, 31, I don't see that as being old or anything. I think I've got another good, 6 to 8 years left, but I might walk out on an icy path tomorrow and my knee might give out and I might tear my knee to pieces, and I never get to do any of these things. So I do try and kind of relish every moment now and enjoy everything about it, even the bits that maybe aren't so enjoyable, the weight cuts and whatnot. I do try and find some kind of pleasure there. And like I say, going down and fighting in, an iconic venue in London, I can't be in main event like we mentioned, defending a belt. What's to complain about there? That's me living my dream and doing something I've wanted to do for the last 20 years.
For your sake, and it's not for me because I live down south, but for your sake, it would be good to have another Cage Warriors up in the Northwest sometime soon with you in the headline.
That would be great. Obviously, this fight's on a Friday. It's in London. I'm not going to have many people willing to travel down for that unless they're close family and friends and whatnot. So have something around Liverpool, or even dribbling into Manchester, preferably Liverpool because that's where Next Gen are based and whatnot. But anywhere kind of in the Northwest would be brilliant. I think that would sell out in 30 seconds.
Yeah.
That everybody in the Northwest is engaged in MMA. Everyone knows what it is, and Cage Warriors have had successful shows up there before. You've got huge gyms in Liverpool, Manchester, and whatnot. So yeah, I would like to see them kind of move. The York Hall's been a comfort zone for them during COVID and whatnot, and I'd like to see them move out of that now and press on into, like you say, the Northwest, or even going back to Ireland or something like that. That would be great.
It's just funny hearing you say that, because right before we did this interview, I was interviewing another fighter from the card. He's from London, and he's like, "Oh yeah, it's great. I'm gonna have all my friends and family there." And
That's right. A Cage Warrior sent me a message the other day and he said, listen, the top ticket seller is going to get an extra 500 quid. And I'm thinking that extra 500 quid be lovely, but it's someone based in London are going to sell a load of tickets and whatnot, and they can do with the 500 quid what they want, but it's not going to be my 500 quid, I don't think.
it's gotta be said, but we talked about this last time. Win here, you're a Cage Warriors champion with a defense now, and all signs point to UFC coming back to London in March. Timeline works out all right, doesn't it? What do you think?
It does. Yeah, it does. I think. I mean, there's two kind of pathways that I can see branching off after this fight. One being the UFC March, which would be incredible, and the other one being I still have that kind of ambition to move down to welter and fight for the belt there. That's not gone away. That's not left. If anything, that's I've not took this fight lightly at all, but I kind of almost feel I'm defending something I've already got. That and the kind of that hunger isn't as strong as it was for the Frederick fight, because I was fighting for something I've wanted for years and something I've not got. And now I'm king of the hill, and maybe that hunger is not as strong as it initially was. So a journey down to welterweight, fight for the belt, maybe against someone like Reece McKee, a big name like that. That would, for me, match UFC in March, which again surprises me. 6 months ago, I would have said UFC. I want to go to UFC. The Cage Warriors belt is a pathway to get to the UFC, and I'll be right in saying that. But something about this kind of double champ, Cage Warriors dropping down to welterweight, new challenges. The welterweight division is full of monsters as well. It's a really strong division, and I think, like we've mentioned before, the middleweight division has suffered as a result of me kind of blasting through the last four guys. So drop down to welterweight or the UFC, both of those really appeal to me, and hopefully I'll be offered one of those things after this fight in next Friday.
Cage Warriors double champs have done all right for themselves, haven't they? So
yeah, that's you think of the double champs and they're all again monsters: Mason Jones, Conor McGregor, and whatnot. Yeah. And I say Cage Warriors, I've been fighting there for a long time, and I've got a lot of good and bad memories, but preferably good memories. Recently, but it's something that's I'm always gonna cherish looking back on. And you kind of etched then in Cage Warriors history. There's a handful of double champs, and listen, I didn't think I'd win one. To even be thinking about or even be talking to you about two belts is, again, something that I'm really grateful for, and something I'm very much looking forward to thinking about a little bit more after this fight.
do you think you'd feel the same way if the welterweight title wasn't vacant at the moment?
Yeah, I think so. I'm certainly not scared of anybody down at welterweight. They've got Kent Cotman fighting Figlak. I think that will be a fight that we'll be thinking about.
They'll be
Maybe
in the
number one
mix.
contendership in division. Yeah, or Reece McKee again. Although his UFC kind of career didn't go the way wanted it to. He's looked good when he's come back from Cage Warriors and whatnot. So, and I think that'd be a monster fight if you brought that to Liverpool and Northwest. Reece McKee versus me, I think that would go down really well. And that I just can't see that fight being anything but a really, really, really good, entertaining fight. So that would appeal to me. So anything, I mean, I'm not scared of anyone in that division. Burlington's, again, someone who's maybe come off a bad knockout, but I really rate him. I think he's a really good fighter. There's really good fighters in the welterweight division, but that's why I want to drop down. I can stay at middleweight and be comfortable, and maybe they keep bringing these guys in from outside of Cage Warriors, or I can drop down and come in a really strong division and put my stamp on that as well.
I was just going to touch on that when you were saying that the welterweight division does seem to have a bit more going for it than the middleweight division at the minute, doesn't it?
It does. I mean, these divisions ebb and flow. It's very much like the UFC. I used to think of John Jones in the light heavyweight kind of period. You had Shogun Rua, you had Machida, you had maybe Rampage and John Jones, and really, really strong division. And now maybe you look at the division now, and it's not really got that as much depth as it did. You can say that about the middleweight division and whatnot as well at some points. Now I would say the middleweight division is extremely strong. We've had Asaniel and Whitaker and Gastelum and like Cannonier and whatnot. And you do these weight class do ebb and flow, and I think the middleweight has. Again, I think that's possibly my fault with getting rid of James Webb and Frederick, and George Smith was on a 5-fight win streak when I beat him as well. So it just is what it is. And I assume at some point they'll get some more middleweights in there, but I'm not really willing to wait around. I'd rather drop down. I do think I'd be a big welterweight as well. So that interests me going forward. Again, thinking of the UFC, you don't want to be small in the weight class. So yeah, I think it's going to bring new challenges, more focus. I'll have to be more disciplined. I'll have to be more training and whatnot, and that's something that I'm really looking forward to after Christmas.
That's obviously looking forward though. We've got another fight, like we said, on the horizon.
100%.
Back on
Yeah,
this.
that's. I mean, 100%. I would hate for anyone to kind of think I'm looking past Milan.
Yeah,
I
of
think
course,
he's
yeah.
very dangerous. He's very dangerous, and maybe not in the way he's going to kind of knock you out or anything. He's not a devastating puncher from what I've seen, but he's very awkward, and he has this tendency to kind of again be patient, and then he'll take you down and keep you there and win the round. Very close rounds. I think his last fight was a split decision on Aries in Africa, I think, or in France or wherever that is. So he's a very tricky opponent, and I'm certainly not being complacent. And I am switched on, and I'll be ready for him come Friday.
Back on that fight then, just quickly. In your mind, you've talked about what you think he brings to the table, what you bring to the table. In your mind, if you just had to think about it, visualize it for a second, how do you see it playing out?
I think I'll TKO him in maybe I'm thinking the third round. I think I'm gonna get a track on him at some point. I am gonna corner him. He'll find his back to the cage, or I'll scramble and be on top. I do get the feeling. I mean, no one likes getting punched. I certainly don't like getting punched, but he does not react well to getting caught. You touch him on the chin and he'll drop down, or he'll turn his back and run away. He does not like taking any kind of damage. Again, it's not like you're not supposed to like taking damage, but you can still adjust to it and you can react accordingly to it, and you can defend appropriately, where he seems to just kind of throw his hands up in the air and panic. So I think I kind of want to track him down, kind of like the James Webb fight, catch him on the cage and just blast him and see how he responds to that. But that's kind of what I see. I think I'll hurt him in kind of the second, third round, and I think he'll be a little bit overwhelmed.
It's a good way to end it. Matt, thanks for the time tonight. Feel free if you want just to give any shout outs. So where can people keep up what you're doing this week?
So people can see me on the normal kind of social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, Matt the Beast Bonner. Thanks to any sponsors who have, I'm lucky enough now to have a lot of sponsors where I can't remember all the names, which is, a good problem to have, I suppose. But you can see all my sponsors on my social medias, and they've contributed an awful lot to this fight camp. And thanks for yourself to invite me on. I was a little bit late for anyone who's tuned in.
It's all good. It's all good.
I was a little bit late, which I hate doing, but thanks very much for being patient and taking the time to interview me.
Thanks. It's great to have you. Second time now. It's always a pleasure to speak to you, man.
Cheers, buddy.
Like we said, your call. If you're in London, get down. I'm gonna try and get down myself.
Nice.
UFC Fight Pass. If you're not in London, easy. Just load it up. Check out Matt Bonner next week.
Cheers, buddy.
Yeah, and thank you for the time.
That's one pleasure.
Best of luck.
Thanks, buddy. See you soon.
Thanks.